Most amazing ideas come from those that do the work day to day. From China, they were able to test like 3 million people at a time with COVID from AI.
Most people learn when they're funding clinical trials is A, they're a lot more expensive than you anticipate, and B, they take a lot longer. We've funded over 175 clinical trials.
What about the impact of AI? Are you seeing with clinical trials? Today we're talking about charitable trusts. What are they? How do you set up a charity? And where does that journey begin? And I'm so delighted to welcome Dr. Helen Critchley.
Hello, very pleased to meet you.
Good morning. And
morning.
How are you?
I'm very well.
Dr. Helen, where does your doctorate come from? It's something kind of clever.
Yeah, so my doctorate's in molecular pharmacology. So basically I was looking at cells and seeing how they worked when you introduced different drugs onto the cells. So they grew on a nice little plate in the laboratory, nothing to do with humans, cutting up humans. And I'd have a look at them in the microscope and then I'd drop a drug on them and see how they reacted.
Wow.
So that was my PhD.
Molecular
Pharmacology.
Setting up a charitable trust. What is a charity and where did your journey begin with your charitable trust that you're involved in?
My journey began with basically working for Mr. Jon Moulton. He had a passion for medical research, clinical research in particular. He wanted to use some of his wealth to be able to give back to people, so in a very altruistic way. So he started in 2004 with a very small charity based in the UK, and then when he moved to Guernsey, he set up a charitable trust based in Guernsey.
Okay.
So to do that, he had to go and look up what's called the Guernsey Registry, which is the list of all the charities that are based in Guernsey, and also get some advice from lawyers.
So basically, how you start is then obviously, if you're a high net worth individual, you've made some money, you want to make a difference, and you decide that you're going to set up a charity and look at donations, structuring.
Yes.
Anyone setting up a trust is be accountants, lawyers, tax.
And then if you have any staff, trustees as well. So obviously the trustees have a big responsibility as to where the money comes from and where it's divested.
So a trustee, so just to educate people, so a trustee is someone that's appointed by the trust or the charitable foundation to make sure that the charitable trust is run properly, professionally, and in line with its objectives.
Absolutely. So most charities have at least 3 trustees. For Guernsey, you have to have at least 1 based in Guernsey. So they have a legal responsibility to make sure that the charity is complying with all of the rules and regulations.
And anyone can set up a charity?
Yes, anyone can set up a charity. Some are based obviously on donations that they gain from the public. Our particular one isn't. So it's all the donations so far have been through Mr. Moulton himself.
Okay, perfect. So what does your charitable trust do? What causes and things do you help support? So
the very basic aim is that we want to look at giving something back. So we want to be able to fund clinical trials.
What is a clinical trial? Because so many people, if I asked my daughter what's a clinical trial, so I said, Daddy, what are you talking about?
Yeah, okay. So a clinical trial is basically where you are looking at a new intervention. And when I say intervention, I mean it could be a drug, it could be a questionnaire, it could be a surgical intervention, it could be a device, or it could be a diagnostic test.
Wow.
And there's probably all kinds of variations of that as well. So what Jon wanted to do was look at clinical trials that specifically were looking at some sort of intervention that would then get to patients very quickly.
Okay.
So he's interested more at the sort of things that would be ready to put into a clinic and be used by patients quickly if they were shown to have benefit.
So the sharp end of when people need help,
Yeah.
and speed to solution.
Pretty much, yes. So he likes to fund things that are 3 years or less. And like I say, it's then to benefit the most number of people in the shortest time possible. So the things that we fund, but are particularly interested in, are the things that are ready to be used in clinic and to maybe change clinical practice. And so obviously pharma companies invest a lot in clinical trials and they invest a lot of money, but there's an awful lot of what we call non-commercial trials that are trials in academia. So it could be a professor or a nurse has an idea for a trial, and then they go off and they have to try and find funding for that.
Because I find that most most amazing ideas come from those that do the work day to day.
Yep.
So if I'm a nurse or a junior doctor practicing on a ward and I think about something, I think, hey, this needs to change. But it's like, where do you start on that journey? So you'd have to do some research to say, I want to make a difference with a clinical trial, or how do I bring this product or idea to kind of make a difference?
Absolutely. So that's basically what we did when Jon first started in 2004. He put out feelers to find out if anybody would be interested in receiving funding, and he would say to himself he's learned a lot since the initial funding round went live. So we had about 4 or 5 that he decided to fund. The thing that most people learn when they're funding clinical trials is A, they're a lot more expensive than you anticipate, and B, they take a lot longer than you anticipate as well, due to all the regulatory aspects. And unfortunately in 2004 there were a big regulation came into the UK that had a massive impact on academic research. But going forward, that's all sorted.
That's the main thing. So if you are practicing and you are a nurse and you have this amazing idea, you could find yourselves and say, look, I do this, I think this needs to change because of this, this and this. And if it's something that can be started and finished within 3 years, it'd be something that you could potentially consider funding.
Absolutely, but what we try to avoid is funding things that would be funded by some of the big funders in the UK. So your MLC and your sort of big cancer charities and things like that.
So you're looking for niche changes which the big companies aren't already doing, exploring, etc. So you're looking for those unique ideas where you can make a difference, but it's kind of left afield of what's normal or considered normal in that world?
Mostly, yes. So a lot of the big charities that fund medical research will have pots of money for certain pots of research. So it could be cardiovascular, it could be something to do with cancer, it could be women's health. We're much broader than that. So we try and fund things that don't fit in with their scope, with their pots of money and where it would be set, because we're more flexible. We don't have to be bound by their rules.
How do people find you? Do you get many people sort of out of the blue to say, hey, I've got this idea, can you help? Does that happen a lot?
It does.
Yeah.
We found that obviously in the early days not many people had heard of it, whereas now we've funded over 175 clinical projects.
So you funded 175, that's a lot of money and a lot of trials and a lot of work. And is that knowledge shared in your field? Or let's say you find something, you do a clinical trial, you get some results. Do you publish papers, or do the people that get involved do that?
Yes, so it's the actual researchers will publish papers.
Okay.
And it is one of our criteria for funding that we expect the results to be published at the end.
That's amazing.
We've had some very big wins. So there's a drug that was basically out of patent, cheap as chips. A researcher had an idea that you could use it in trauma patients, and it has undoubtedly saved hundreds and thousands of lives just by doing the trial, checking that yes, it did actually save lives by being able to use the drug as quickly as possible. And that's gone on to further research. So they're now looking at it in women's health. They're now looking at it in sort of ambulance settings rather than waiting till you get to the hospital. So it's undoubtedly saved lives.
What in your role is the most enjoyable aspect? Because obviously you're consulting on lots of different things in the charitable field. What excites you about what you do?
So my background is clinical trials. So I worked in pharma companies, I've worked in academia as well, looking after clinical trials. So for me, going out and meeting the researchers and learning about their ideas, most of them are amazing. Unfortunately, we can't fund them all, but it's trying to find those ones that are really exciting, really novel, and have the potential to save a lot of lives.
And where do you go if you need extra money? So let's say you find something and they need 10 million, but you can contribute 4 or 5. Do you have places to go for that?
So we don't, but what normally happens is that another charity, so a more specific charity, say Prostate Cancer UK or something of that ilk, will come to us and say, we've got an amazing trial, we've got 3 million to fund it, we need an extra £1 million. If that's of particular interest to us, and we would then donate that £1 million for them to be able to run the trial. We don't do that all that often, I have to say. We like to fund discrete projects on our own.
That's amazing. So if we've got people in the audience that want to make donations or want to make a difference, and I'm sure we can introduce them to you and you can explore that as a
Absolutely,
private
yes.
conversation, because so many people may want to make a difference and may like the idea of doing and supporting what you do, but they don't have the time and the energy to set up their own charitable trust, and it's probably easier to work with someone else that's already established.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had contacts with a few people that have wanted to give money, and they want to give money, say, to a specific area of medical research, and we're just going to contact them when our next funding call goes out, and we will ask if they want to sort of put something forward at that point.
So Helen, so impact measurement, I'd imagine from an investment perspective, if people are investing in things, I'm sure if they're donating to a specific cause, they'd like to know what measurement mechanisms exist.
So for us, it's great if they're publishing in something like the Lancet, but not all of them are going to be published in the Lancet.
What is the Lancet?
The Lancet is a medical journal, and it's one of the top medical journals for publications.
So if you get in there, you've done a great job.
It's prestigious if you get in the Lancet, yes. But not all of them will, and
Yeah.
there are lots of other prestigious publications out there as well. So for us, it's more making sure that the work gets published if it's of sufficiently high quality, and obviously we don't review the quality of the publication. That would be done by the publishing house themselves. We're not able to sort of push those faster. We have to sort of wait for the peer review to happen.
So for you, measurement is about doing the clinical trial and then publishing the data. And
Yes.
that's kind of where your journey ends at that particular time and point.
It is. Obviously, we quite often get researchers coming back to us and letting us know if it's had more impact than that. So it could be something that actually does change medical practice.
And what about the impact of AI? Are you seeing with clinical trials?
So it's being used more in clinical trials. We are looking to maybe fund specifically a couple of projects in AI, and it certainly is being used in some of the applications that are coming forward.
Do you think that's exciting? Because from what I read from China, they were able to test like 3 million people at a time with COVID from AI.
It is exciting. So there is a New England medical journal that posts a blog quite regularly on AI. They still say the human factor is going to be present for a long, long time.
And what about doctors and people that may practice? Do they ever get involved or not? Is it just research? Do you ever go and get an opinion from a professor or someone in the field say, hey, our data person is saying this, the clinical guy is saying this. What do you think? How does it work?
Most of the time it will be a professor, so it'll be a clinical professor. So
Wow.
you have what's called a clinical academic. So their main
Clinical academic.
So they're doctors,
Yeah.
but then they've
Is that their day job then, or?
day job is being a doctor,
Yeah.
usually a consultant,
Right.
and then they sort of go off into academia. That's when they lecture, and that's when they may have more research-based interests.
Incredible. I'm sure if you're passionate in that field, you can truly make a big difference.
Absolutely. So they're the ones who usually come to us with the ideas.
Okay, amazing. How do they find you? Just Google on the internet or?
When we first started, it was pretty much word of mouth.
Yeah.
And then we started advertising in what's called the BMA,
BMA?
British Medical Journal,
Oh, right.
not BMA, British Medical Journal,
Yeah.
and also in the Lancet. And we put in a one-page spread in there announcing that we've got so much money to spend and we're looking to fund a certain number of projects. We also have a lot of word of mouth. So we have a whole list of people who write to me regularly asking when the next funding call's going live.
Yeah.
So when the next funding call is announced, I write to all of these people, which is about 400 or so, and let them know. So that could be an actual individual professor, or it could be a research department, or it could be, sometimes we have links, a specific link with the university, and then they will distribute that information across all of their researchers.
Incredible. And are you global with your projects or just UK based?
We tend to be UK based. We have had a couple that have been international, but they run from the UK.
Okay.
So we haven't really gone out where we've had a project that's come to us from another country that we've funded. And that's for logistical reasons. We want to make sure that we actually know the researchers. I try and meet as many as possible. So I will try and go to the universities and meet them. But we do, we have funded research that has taken place in other countries.
Wow, amazing. So Helen, if I want to get involved in your charitable trust, how would I go about that?
So the best way to do that would be to contact me directly via email. So my email address is helen@jpmmoulton.co.uk. We also have a website. It's linked to Persitus LLP, but there's a specific tab for the charity on there, and it tells you exactly what we fund, our criteria for funding, and what we funded in the past. So any publications are listed on there, so you can see the sort of projects that we funded in the past.
Fantastic, perfect. So thank you so much for doing this today. I know you not an enjoyable experience for you personally, but you've done an amazing job. So I'd just like to thank Dr. Helen Critchley for educating us on the causes they support, Charitable Trust, what is it, how do they work? And if you want to get involved with their causes, please link out in the comments below. The details will be there for Helen. And thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.